a decision-theoretic connectionism. Punishment, behavior modification, emotion, affective disorder, depression, learning, negative reinforcement and its interaction with mood, and lastly, memory, latent inhibition in schizophrenic, because I want to bring out that learning is through memory modification. So here's my research. Subjects perform a task of repeated trials, and each trial has the following risky gain. So you're offered 20 positive, then you get 20 points. You can take it or you bet on more. If you bet on more, you might get negative 40, then you have a loss and you go to the next trial, or you may get a positive 40 and you can still take it or bet on more. And the last offer will be either negative 80 or positive 80. So same randomization across subjects, and the intervention with music preference, most preferred music, least preferred music. And I found that those listening to most preferred music while performing the task, they have a higher proportion of safe choice immediately after loss. So 20, 20, 20, if they want to take a risk, but it turned out to be a negative 40, they will immediately go back to the safe choice, more likely than group B. So here's how I understood the result. If the music preference intervention is an effective mood induction, then the same loss elicits different response given difference in mood. So this could be understood with the law of diminishing return, because wealth difference makes a preferential difference over the same monetary gain. Someone richer would not prefer the same amount of money than someone poorer, and this has application in philosophy. So equal consideration, but on diminishing return, we should give priority to those that are poorer. So even given equal consideration, we should not always have equal treatment. Differential treatment is justified, and even if we ignore merit and desert, even only about incentivizing good behaviors, this also applies. And if we are to deter bad behaviors, we should also take into consideration of sensitivity towards punishment given the difference in situation. So actuality, that's the actual situation, is constituted by how things are and how things fare, fact and value, and how things fare. The sum of utility, that's how well one is doing, how well one is, that's the objective well-being. And for living systems, that's the welfare. So like the objective well-being, it is the way it is through our knowledge of the world and evaluation of state of affairs. Through our knowledge, we have a mood. So in a good case, our mood indicates our objective well-being. Without constituting our objective well-being, the mood relates to our subjective well-being, and because our mind is part of our system, part of us. So the mind, subjective well-being, it's an equilibrium, a psychological equilibrium, a balance. And to contrast it with a depressive realism, maybe someone would, when they're depressed and maybe they dwell on something, but they look at the world in a more realistic instead of a wishful way. Yeah, they don't feel as good as someone that are more cheerful, but at least their mood might in fact indicate their objective well-being. So Aaron Beck, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, talk about depression loop. Our cognitive evaluation affects our mood given the state of affairs, and also mood state affects our the prior mood affects our posterior mood given the same inputs and the transition, mood state transition constitute our emotion. And I can illustrate this with the following. So someone very poor, grieving because of their poverty, the same monetary donation would make a difference in the joy intensity, given how sad, how depressed they are because of the poverty. And the important thing is that the value of the amount of money is invariant. You're very poor or a little richer, the same $1,000, it has the same purchase power. But in different situations, especially, so let's say someone that's risk averse, even if something, a decision has an outcome of high utility with a very low probability, well, yeah, the expected utility, it is a certain way, but maybe that person would think it unreasonable to make that bet. And that makes a difference to whether an act is correct or not, given the situation. Even if something very valuable, you get that, it's good for you, but given how much you know, your background knowledge, maybe it's not yet the time to make that bet. And risk aversiveness is important because people talk about fair value and betting behavior, but in my theory, I hold the utility constant because someone risk averse doesn't value the same amount of money less if you decide on expected utility decision making. So learning, negative reinforcement, the error. Von Neumann and Morgenstern, they proposed an internal conception of rationality. We ought to make, well, it's rational to maximize expected utility, and to bring that into neuroscience, let's say a decision is enacted through a certain pattern of neuronal activation. So that neuronal activation, pattern of neuronal activation through memory and to outcome. If the decision is remembered to be more likely to bring about the outcome, then the activation from decision to outcome, the outcome would be with a higher activation because of the stronger synaptic connectivity, and outcome to selection through valuation similarly. So the decision to selection, the synaptic connectivity will make a difference to the eventual activation level of selection. The neurons that the selection is enacted through, and the neurological process, I hypothesize that to be with axon myelination, and the algorithm is the back propagation of error, learning in a feed-forward neural network in which, so there's the expected utility of the decision, and then once the decision is implemented, the environment, feedback, and the actual utility. So given the actual utility is lower than the expected utility, so there's an error. When the error is larger, then the error was being fed back to the neural network. It will modify the weight more, and through trial and error, it is hoped, well, it will minimize error. So through axon myelination modification and the corresponding synaptic connectivity change. So of course, decision implemented differently with different behavior. The same, you can buy a lottery by going to different places to buy that. And that makes a difference to our preference ranking, because when we bring in behaviors, and especially when that's how behaviors we can form preferences over behaviors that are more risk taking and behavior that are more risk averse. So our preference and our propensity towards risk will manifest itself through our preference over behaviors. And when we have emit a certain behavior, there's a certain expectation, and if our expectation is verified, it is a cognitive reward, and especially through trial and error, it's through weight increment that a certain decision is selected, and if the selected decision is responded from the world, the feedback is that the actual utility and expected utility is the discrepancy is at least zero if the actual utility is not better, more. So there's no error. So you don't have to modify the weight. So this is positive reinforcement. And of course, the agent, the weight increment, it is the animal remembered to emit similar behavior in similar situation. And the neurological structure, I hypothesize it is a competitive winner-take-all network. So a certain activation inhibits all others when it is selected. And I, again, hypothesize that to be implemented in the anterior singular gyrus, especially given its a strong, bold signal in fMRI doing Stroop task. That's when, even at a personal level, we could experience the urges to do something in competition to what we really want to do. So memory, latent inhibition, that's a very big thing in classical conditioning. Animal training, very simple. Stimulus, response, reflex, that's our unconditioned response. So the conditioned stimuli paired with the unconditioned stimuli, the repeated stimuli synchronicity would have paired the conditioned stimulus with the response. So the response would be now the conditioned response, and schizophrenics are discovered to be insensitive to the cessation of unconditioned stimulus, because, well, ring a bell and the food is delivered, so the dog paired these two stimulus, and when you ring the bell, it will salivate. But when you ring the bell without delivering the food, the salivation will cease. But for schizophrenics, they don't unpair that easily. The conditioned response sustained more probably in schizophrenic. So let's say some environmental triggering some hypothesis. Oh, someone is coming towards me. But when you look back, you see that no one is there. So the evidence disconfirm your hypothesis, and that disconfirmation is an epistemic punishment. So supposedly you will be less disposed to form that hypothesis. Of course, that's the intellect. It's putatively under rational control. When we talk about something experiential, hallucination, a projection fulfillment fulfilled by a non-veridical experience. A veridical experience is something like when you look at the TV screen, there's an external source, and the experience is caused in the right way, in the favorable environment, let's say. But non-veridical experience, more typically, it is neurologically generated. So it is very roughly generated from within yourself, but of course it interacts with the environment as well, the environmental triggers. So it is hoped that hallucination, given my my theory, that when a schizophrenic is in a better mood, sometimes when he is triggered, the better mood and that he didn't that the evidence disconfirmed the hypothesis, and the experience that was expected did not occur, and the in verified expectation, the larger error. It is hoped that with a better mood and the larger error, the cessation of the response, that is the hallucination, will cease. So, but of course, as we saw, the cognitive impenetrability, yeah, the evidence disconfirmed the hypothesis, but you will still get triggered. And that's the whole point about the recalcitrant experience. And that's when pharmaceutical intervention is necessary. And here's a summary. I talk about punishment and behavior modification, emotion, affective disorder, depression, learning, negative reinforcement, and decision-theoretic connectionism. And lastly, I bring out what's in the black box in animal learning and in classical and operant conditioning. Thank you very much.